Hi all, welcome to my channel, welcome to my world. This is the world of Wayne. Today I'm going to show you how I went about making this Stannarts mechanical Bruce Shark diorama. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. I didn't really take much footage, so I have interspliced this with some of the Zoom calls that I had with Phil from Sprueverse and Aztec Dummy Lou Dalmaso. But I want to give you an idea of exactly how I built this massive model. There we go, I'll put that back on the shelf, but you don't really realise how big that actually is when it's in the background there, but I'm hoping for scale, this gave you an idea when you've just looked at that camera. So where did this whole Sprueverse challenge come from? Well, obviously this model is from Stannarts. I have put a link in the video description and there's also a QR code on the screen, but it all started with Phil dropping us this proposition.
But the challenge here is you find that production still, and that's going to be the inspiration for your build. And so when you make your final reveal, you're going to show us your production still and tell us why you went in that direction, and then you're going to do your reveal, and it has to be it's not canon and it doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be inspired by that moment. So there must be elements from that photo in your build.
So basically we all had an idea of what we wanted to do, and during that Zoom call we all basically said what inspired us to build the model that we are futurely going to be building. Now in true World of Wayne fashion, and also probably Phil Siegel's Sprueverse challenge, we had got to work on it before the challenge had even begun, and actually Lou's face in this little bit here is a picture. But the but I did notice that your shark had, like, you'd put sellotape on it to see, you know, like masking tape to see it join together. Have you started?
No. I promise you I have not started.
I did have a T-shirt saying I promised you I haven't started it yet.
I was almost going to put mine on. I promise you I haven't started.
I have. I've started. That's why I was holding these in the air.
Not to. This is what.
Oh, you got tanks. That's what your tank was. Okay.
And then you need that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, Phil, I'll show you again. I designed that. I designed it.
Really? That's fantastic.
The only thing I've done as far as starting is none of this. It's putting up.
That's not true. I'm sorry. Painting up your shark is absolutely starting.
Not starting. But I am going to tell you that I'm going to go out and maybe get some brass to build my gantry out of.
Oh, nice.
When I say I'm going old school scratch building.
Well, you can do that as well. Old school scratch building.
Look at that.
So when I first decided what I was going to do, that I was going to do this sort of diorama here, I obviously needed some inspiration photos. And just on the screen here, you can see some of the photos that I used as inspiration for what I was going to build. Now, the way that I tackled this was that I was going to do the diorama first. I was going to have the diorama complete and do the shark afterwards. So for that purpose, in this video, I'm going to show you in that order, me doing the diorama first and then moving on to the shark. So to start that, I needed to create the pier here. Now the pier was actually created out of some basswood, or it might be called basswood, I don't know. And this is a thickness of around about 2 millimeters, I'd say, looking like that. And as you can see, perfect cuts were made from my Algo laser engraver. And what I went to do is actually just cut planks first. Well, see for yourself. And once all of those parts were created, it's just a case of putting them all together. The uprights for the pier were made out of 1 centimeter dowling rod, square dowling rod. So there you go, there's just the wooden structures of the pier done. Now actually that is round the wrong way. This is the way that's going to be facing the diorama. because we do have the girder which supports this whole section going underneath there. But I just wanted the wood section done first before I paint it. Now I'm going to be using a really watered down greyish brown sort of colour to go over this, really watered down, because I do want to still keep this grain effect on the wood and the posts and stuff like that. And then I'm going to weather this up. The legs are going to have some seaweedish type things put there as well. So that's how that's looking at the moment. And this is to give you an idea of how the tank's going to look when it's on here. Now I'm ready to stain this. So to do the weathering, I'm actually going to be putting a dark oak stain on this to start off with. This is the one I'm using at the moment. Furniture Clinic Wood Stain Dark Oak. I'm going to be covering the whole lot of this in that. And then we're going to lighten it up with a grey wash. So let's get that first coat of stain on and see how this looks. And there you go, that's the stain with a grey wash. Still drying, but that's looking pretty cool. Very aged looking by the sea. So once the pier was done, I was going to add some details, just like some ropes to the side, but I then needed to get onto work by creating the really intricate things like the piping looms, the air tank, the girder that goes underneath the pier, and for that I used Tinkercad. And it took an absolute age to do, and for things like this, all I did was just create one section here, and then I just duplicated it all the way along. I had to put this piece in two parts, so that it can actually go along the whole width of the pier. But I'm sure you'll agree, for a first time effort, that isn't too bad. Now, that isn't the only thing that I created in Tinkercad. If I just go back to my homepage here, you'll see some of the other things that I've been creating on Tinkercad. So things like the top here for the air tank, as you can see, that's looking like that, creating that around. So not the easiest thing to use, Tinkercad, but a lot of this are just in the shapes menu here. So you do have shapes for this sort of thing already in there, and then basically you just use this hole material to take away stuff, or the shape material to add stuff. And by doing that, that's how I create things like the piping. So the pipes here that the hoses are going to go into look just like that. That was all created just with the preset shapes, and then manipulating them, changing the scale to put them in there. What else have we done? The little controls for the air releases, if you like, the hydraulics, they're looking just like that. And you'll be pleased to know, let me just see if there's anything else in there. This was the frame for the junction point for the hoses to go into. But they were all created with Tinkercad. Now, I haven't used Tinkercad for years. So I'm doing the air tank was the first thing that I created. Once I was confident with that, then I went on to the girders, and then I created all the other things. Now, you'd be pleased to know that all of those files, if you do want to build that diorama for yourself, I have made available in the video description as STLs. I think they're as STLs. I'm sure they are, actually. Just thinking. Yes, they are. There are STLs. So you'll be able to print those for yourself. But they are all available should you want to do that. But Tinkercad allowed me to make the model, or just the pier section, look like this. And this is with the stain fully dry and with the girder underneath. So we've just got to do some detailing with ropes and stuff like that for the pier now, but looking good. So I thought I'd show you where we're up to at the moment. This is the pier that I'm still working on. All the controls are in place. It's almost finished now. This is. I just got to do the battery boxes and electrics for it. But that's that part completed. So once that's done, put that to one side, because the next thing to do is to think about the base that it's going to go on and how to do the water effects. Now, the base that you can see it on there is actually a red base that was part of my Peugeot 205, which I never used. So I repurposed that, and I started to actually do the techniques that I wanted to do for the water. Now, I used wood glue and toilet paper. And initially on one of my Patreon streams, what I did first was coat the whole thing in wood glue, looking kind of like this. But this isn't making the waves, just so you know. This is just making some random sort of like bumps in this surface, so this surface is no longer completely flat. The bumps for the waves is going to be made by the toilet roll. But it looks like a beach coming in already. And you really do need one of these flattish kind of brushes for this. If you find when you put it on that it's not doing this, making large areas and flat areas like it's doing there, you just want to let your glue sort of thicken up a bit. Just leave it to stand for half an hour. I've left this one standing for a good half an hour. Now the reason for doing that was because I didn't want a perfectly flat surface as an initial surface to put my toilet roll on. What I wanted was it to be slightly bumpy. Once I got to that stage, it was a case of using a lot of PVA glue, watered down. Actually, I think I used PVA with wood glue watered down and toilet paper to do this. So this is what it looks like after 72 hours. Pretty cool. What I'm going to do now is rock hard. I'm going to be giving it a grey primer coat. I use my Army Painter colour for this. That's just going to make sure that when I start putting the sea colours down, I'm going to be having nice even layers. Let's do that. Okay, so now I'm in a stage of brushing on the base coat for the sea. Now the sea is kind of like a really dark blue, almost black, with a tiny bit of green in it. And I'm always going to be using a brush because I want strokes. I don't want this to be airbrushed. Well, not the base layer anyway. The top layer can be. But I'm using, to start off with, a very rich royalish blue. I'm not aiming to have it this colour at the end, just so you know it's going to be a lot darker than this. And all I'm going to do is get it on my brush and start to put it on. So it's going to take a while because there's all sorts of divots and stuff now for this to go into. So what I'll do is I will smother this completely, come back and we'll see how this looks. Okay, so we're just waiting for the first coat to dry. This is the base colour. The next colour I'm going to be putting on top is actually this one here, which is grey blue model air. So let's put that on when this is dried. Okay, so we got blacks, greens, greys, blues, all sorts of colours on here. So this is the base colour, and watch how this transforms when I put a few coats of ultra gloss varnish on this. This is going to look pretty good. Then I'm going to be adding some really light grey to white sort of froth effects on some of these waves. Pretty happy with how that's looking at the moment though. Now before I put that gloss coat on, I wanted to check that the diorama was going to fit, the pier was going to fit, the pipes were going to fit, everything was going to fit. And I also needed to drill 2 holes, which is going to mount the shark to into that sea that I just created. Okay, let's talk about where we're up to now. So basically, the sea colour's down, but I haven't glossed this. I still need to gloss this before I fix this into place and then cut these hoses so that they go directly into the water. I have cut 10mm holes here for the shark to sit in. So to give you an idea of how that looks, I haven't put the rest of the shark there, just the bit that's going to stand up there. It's going to kind of look like that. Giving you an idea of how this looks. So exciting. I love these projects. And then once again, to give an idea of how it's going to look scale-wise with the whole thing, I haven't put the end of the mouth in yet. It's going to look like that. Pretty cool. So I thought I'd take a break in the proceedings to show you what I've done so far. So I've painted the frame. I've put some of the parts in here, and obviously the interior frame, servos and some hydraulics are in here. I do want to sort of pump that out a bit more with some piping, perhaps some wires in there as well, just to give that a little bit more depth. There is a couple of massive pipes to go in there anyway. This is kind of like what the head's going to look like. That's not glued on yet, although the bottom section of the jaw is, and the jaws are glued into place as well. But when it comes time to painting this, I'm going to have to mask all of that off. I'm going to have to mask all of that off as well, so I can just paint the full shark. But that's looking pretty good at the moment. Now, I did have some problems getting that cage in, so I actually just snipped off the locating pins, and as you can see, I've got a clamp on there holding that in at the moment. Other than that, it's gone in perfect. It actually fits in the 4 locating pins on there, then it sits into the brackets down the bottom, and then there's 2 brackets at the top, which you can just about see that that's gone in as well. Now this is where my activist nature comes in. When it comes to actually putting the shark together and painting it, I just lost myself and basically spent a whole day doing that. So I haven't really got much footage to show you. Just so you know, when I joined the parts for the shark together, I used epoxy glue, which is Gorilla Epoxy glue. And then I filled all of the seams with this Magisculpt resin here, where you put 1 part hardener to 1 part resin and mix it up. Just sand that down as well. Then when it comes to painting it, I painted the whole thing in my Army Painter colour white, matte white. And then once that was done, I started doing the grey effects with this Vallejo model colour. I'm not going to tell you the number because the numbers don't mean anything because they've changed the design now. But it's basically azul, blue, grey, pale. There we go. You can look at the numbers if you want, but blue, grey, pale. That's what I use for the shark, and then I use just some darker shades to highlight it, some gloss blacks for the eyes, but that meant that the shark was finished. I also used a gloss coat to get that water as glossy and sparkling glass-like as you can, and for that I used some of this Polar Flawless Lacquer here, which is crystal clear. I used about 5 coats of it to get the effect you'll see. So let me give you a close-up of what the finished Bruce shark looks like. I'll try and show some of the effects for the water and stuff that I did, especially showing the gloss coat and how the light actually rebounds off of that. And there you go. So I hope when you see that on the shelf behind me, you know how much work actually went into that. Now, it's a great model. We've done our own thing for the Sprueverse challenge, but if you do just want to get the basic model and perhaps have a go at this for yourself, or actually just build the model just as it comes from Stannarts, I have once again put a link down here for you, and there's a QR code on the screen. So you can get the shark yourself and put your take on the mechanical Bruce. But I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please remember to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please remember to subscribe. Other than that, take care.